Good. Right, that's better. Sorry. Not as easy as it looks on the phone, is it? Right, I'm off. I'm off and running. Hopefully it don't get cut off as I walk away from the building. Hello, Ross.
Hello. Good afternoon.
Well, we can see him. Sophie, can you still hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, you just, dropped out.
Just checking that we're still
yeah,
still on.
Still on.
Good, good. Look at that, found a helicopter.
And one.
There we are, that's the check done. Let's go.
Bits hanging on.
Also got far too many people to get in it. But we can try, can't we? That's it, we'll hang on tight. Okay, moved all the controls. Right, okay. So why are we doing this, first of all, anybody? This check aid, this daily inspection. No good hiding down there. Anyone?
Make sure it doesn't fall apart when we go for a lesson.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course it is, yeah. Because, I mean, as rare as that is to happen, it's highly unlikely. It's always a possibility, isn't it? That you might find something. Not necessarily a defect with the aircraft, but it could be maybe something been stuck on it. Bit of grass, plastic bags been blown across and attached itself to the tail rotor. Could be anything, couldn't it? And when we think about a daily inspection, at the end of the day, you want to check it from top to tail. Now, it is nice to use a checklist to help make sure you're not missing anything. But, you know, what if one day you go to check the aircraft and the checklist's been blown away? Just work with me on this one. Okay. Oh, there it goes. Yeah. Oh, it's gone. Yeah. You know, you sort of think, well, if I'm sensible, I can still go flying. I just need to check the aircraft from top to bottom. And that would make sense. And you could, to a degree, couldn't you? You could just literally work from the top in a methodical manner and work your way around it. So what's the point of having a checklist?
You check everything that you're supposed to check.
Yes. But the one thing the checklist kind of can't put across to you is use a bit of common sense as well, isn't it? Now, we do, you know, on our checks, do quite often amend them. We add a few bits and pieces, not just to focus on the helicopter, but also where is it parked? You know, if you're about to lift from somewhere, is it in a suitable spot straight away? If not, it's going to need to be moved, isn't it? Those sorts of things. Do you know, I'm thinking about my coat on already.
I was
just lovely. Yeah, I think it's the sun's got behind that cloud. It's lovely out here. It's just got a. It's a northeasterly, isn't it? So it's a tiny bit fresh. Yeah. I think when that sun comes back out.
That's good.
Yeah, James in his shorts. That's not a reflection of the skids. Okay. So so
about time for the shorts.
Yeah, a bit of common sense needs to be added to this as well, of course. Thinking about anything extra. So the checklist is very good, yes, to try and make sure you don't miss anything. But what about if you read something on the checklist and you're not sure where it is? Just Google it. Well, that's not a bad idea. It's not the end of the world. You use whatever resources are available, don't you, to try and find the answer. Because you don't want to just sort of think, oh, well, I don't know what that is. I don't know where to look for it. So it is important, because it does come up on the test. We always prep everybody that at the end of the day, the examiner could literally say, show me where that is, and just point to something on the checklist. And you should know where it is, and what it is, and what it does, and what it should look like, and what it shouldn't look like. That's an ideal. Can you still hear me right? Because the wind's blowing a little bit now.
Yeah, still good.
Good. Okay. What was I going to say? It was. Train of thought. Sorry. Yeah. So look at where the helicopter's parked first of all. Now it's a little bit. I know what I was going to say. It's a little bit chicken and egg when you get to check an aircraft. Because what should you check first when you're checking the aircraft? Not bad at all. Yeah, overall condition. So as you're walking towards your aircraft, you should already be making note of where it's parked. Is it into wind? Is it out of wind? Is it in the right place where you want it parked? Is it in the right direction? Is there anything near it, etc., etc.? And then what about how is it sitting? You know, does it look quite level? An R22, that tail should be kind of just angled up nice and gentle. Shouldn't be dead level. If the ground is level, I hasten to add. And one of the tests I got used to was about where the tail would sit in relation to my forehead, sort of thing. James would be similar, although he might fit underneath it.
I'm like adding
And I can just about kind of get under. Now that would actually tell me it's probably slightly nose down because it should just hit me on the forehead.
Interesting. I'm not getting under this.
Go on, James.
be a large.
But it just gives you a bit of an idea, doesn't it? So if this ground was perfectly level,
my head.
yeah.
My head.
So if the ground was perfectly level and I've managed to walk up that horizontal stabilizer, I'll be looking very closely at what? Anybody online?
Say again. Say that. Repeat that again.
So if I had as much clearance under that horizontal stabilizer James just had as he walked under it, and the helicopter was parked on a level surface, I know that's not normal. It shouldn't be up that high. So what would I now be looking very closely at before I looked at anything else? Good. What about
The skids.
Yes.
The frame. The frame itself.
Yeah, Sue's on fire, isn't she? So Sue said I'd be checking the skids at the front, of course, because as you can imagine, if the skids had splayed out at the front, it will seesaw forwards kind of thing, pivot forwards, and the tail will go up in the air. So it'd be an indication. So they'd be looking closely at the front skids, see if it's had a heavy landing, see if they've got impact marks, or actually the back of the skids for some reason look closer together, but what would make them go closer together? So it's definitely the skids at the front. So yeah, top marks, sir. Brilliant. Therefore, of course, if the tail was low, we'd be looking at the back of the skids. But it's often said that the cross tube at the back ought to have a bit of a smile to it. It shouldn't have a big cheesy grin, just a little gentle smile. It shouldn't be dead flat, but yeah, if it's had a heavy land, it'll have more of a bend to, more of a curve to it. Okay, so just overall condition, as Dawn said. Excellent, yeah, well done. Anything else? Just for the moment. Yeah, yeah, good one, Tony. Yeah, that's right. Making sure that there's not a great big puddle of fluid underneath it. What sort of fluid, Tony?
Oil.
Nervous passenger fluid?
Yeah. Nervous pilot fluid.
Yeah. Oil in particular is you know, because it doesn't evaporate, does it? And indeed, there is actually a couple of spots down here already. Is that something to be concerned about? No, because as we come to it, look, it's right under the... Yeah, that's it. It's right under the breather tube, so it's quite normal to find a few spots under there. There's not a big puddle under there, is there? Fuel, would we see it on the ground?
No, it evaporates.
It would evaporate and smell to high heaven, yes. And it would stay in the tarmac,
yes.
So it would make it go more black. If it's on water, it can sort of bead the water and all those sorts of things as well. Oh, sorry. For that pizza. Good. So, apart from that, then, what are we actually going to check first? So I know we have started already checking it now in some respects, even though we haven't really touched the helicopter yet. It's a bit like, if you want to go flying, do you check the weather first? Do you check the NOTAMs first? Do you check somebody? Which bit?
Check the fuses.
You could do.
Fuel or oil?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Would you normally start on one side and work around?
Yeah, that's right. So there's sometimes a methodical way to do all this, but not that you should ever be in a rush, by the way, or a hurry. But one of the things that can really slow you down is the fuel, isn't it? In other words, if you haven't got enough fuel in your aircraft, you spend an hour checking it over, excuse me, only to discover you don't have enough fuel. You might have to wait another hour for the fuel. So it's a good idea probably to get that sorted straight away if it hasn't already been done so. But what we don't want to do is kind of just stab at bits and pieces, otherwise we're not doing it in that nice methodical manner. So what I'd like to do today is actually not use the checklist, but I'm going to go around it, pick people's brains on parts of the helicopter. On that, I'm going to hand you over to James.
No,
Just go back. I'm going to go get my coat.
okay. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
I can spin it around. There you go.
Where's he going?
And that's the end of ground.
That's it. He's gone.
Change that to now. We've
Well,
taken over.
We'll have 5 minutes of stand-up from Mr. Tony Rapp.
Can someone go and get a drink of water as well?
Yes, it's cup of tea time. Go and get a cup of tea.
No,
Would anyone like to look at a specific part of the helicopter statically?
What's that spinny thing on top of the R22?
Yeah. What that is for is if you haven't had a shave in the morning, if you put some cream on and jump high enough while it's on, you won't have to worry about shaving anymore.
Can you demonstrate that to us?
Now I've shaved up there, I'm quite happy now. I genuinely have no idea how to even control
I've
this.
noticed that. I've never noticed that before.
I think it's a bit of heat coming down.
Yes.
I can only presume it's heat.
Could that be a sign of a fault with the main rotor? I must admit, I haven't noticed that before. Only on one side, is it?
Is it?
That's probably just heat coming off the gearbox, coming up the metal of the spline.
Is that the way the rotor spins?
It's coming up the shaft. It's
Definitely
heat
something
coming
that's
up the
been
shaft
blown
across.
downwind.
Yeah. Looks like a major fault.
There you go, Paul.
Oh, no.
They're asking about the discoloration on the top of the mast.
That's just where we all fly so fast that it's got scorch marks on it.
It's where the flames have been scored off.
You could have see through it.
I don't know
Oh, sorry.
how to...
Oh, no, it's right. That's all right. That's quite cool for a minute.
Straight for it.
It's just where it's been painted. So it's had a repair done to it before I bought it. See that little kind of patch, as it were, with those 7 rivets in it? Yeah, it's just a little repair, and somebody's done a slightly dodgy spray job to it.
That's since we've had it.
But you'll be amazed at how many people have never noticed it before. Yeah. It's always been like that. I know, it's funny, isn't it? Is everybody still there? Because we can't see them.
Yeah.
That's all right. Not all nodded off. Okay, and without labouring too many points, so forgive me, but one of the things we also want to do, especially if we're checking the morning, and it's a cold morning, is not spend too long because we get cold, I'm joking, is not run the battery down too much, because next thing you know, you can't start it. So if we do start turning things like the battery on, we want to try and minimise the length of time that's switched on. Now, his has been flown today by James, so it's quite well charged, and it's not cold out here particularly, so you know, you take quite a bit to run that down to the point where you couldn't start it. If it was, this is for checking all helicopters, if it was maybe a turbine that really does rely on its battery, if you haven't got external power, then we want to really be careful about turning that battery on for any length of time. Okay, so I suggest what we're going to do is we're going to just start off at the driver's door. So on the right-hand door, this is probably quite a good place to start. This area here where Dawn is. That's it. So Dawn's right in the prime position, ready to go. And you could kind of start with that corner quite literally and just check that, for instance, you know, visually as you're heading over here, that the windscreen's okay. And whilst we're outside, you might want to have a little look under the helicopter, looking to make sure things like, as you said, that the skids. Oh, what's this, James? No. The skids haven't had a heavy landing and made dents in here, for instance. Those sorts of things, so they're stopping damaged skids are actually touching, they're not all buckled and one lifting against the other. So we kind of started in this area here. Whilst we're out here, said looking at the screen, making sure it's not damaged. Of course, you might think, what's a little bit of a clean? Right, well, we'll park that for 1 second. We can do that at the end. I won't get distracted into it. So I've just made a little note. Yeah, there's a few bugs, I might want to clean it. But whilst I'm here, I'm about to go in the door, perhaps I ought to check the door is secured. And so pretty much, not quite, but nearly all helicopters usually have some sort of a safety pin type thing on them. So these have got split pins. You can see they're both in place, which is good news. You want them to be there. You can't go fly without those in there. But then we could say, right, well, we could open that door, can't we? And have a look inside. Now, something, let's say, it doesn't have to be in this exact order, but you hopefully just get the idea. I'm just working in one spot for a minute, concentrating in one area. Who wants to be cameraman? We can take turns if you like. Something that often gets missed is the speed belt. The condition of it, of course, all the way through, but also it locks if I give it a bit of a tug. So it's an inertia reel belt. Whilst I'm here, making sure the seat hasn't got any, sweat stains from the previous student. Blood, sweat and tears.
Nice.
Under the seat, I don't want to find anything nasty under there. Yes. This seat. Yes, these seats aren't brown. They're all black. We've got the aircraft cover under there, but I haven't got anything nasty underneath it, etc. Looking good, no sharp objects poking upwards. Because I don't want to dwell on it, but the seat is designed to collapse in the event of a very heavy landing. So whatever's under the seat is what you're going to collapse onto. Let's not go there. Right, well, that all looks okay. So I'm going to plug the seatbelt back in. Of course, whilst I'm kind of in this area, I could just look up here and, I need to take the rotor brake off so I can check the helicopter. Got a headset, microphone covers, all those sorts of things. Batteries are working as necessary. What else can we do whilst I'm around here? Yeah, might as well whilst I'm there. Yeah, I'm here, so I might as well. Yep, so check the fire extinguisher. Looks okay, it's not broken, hasn't got the handle snapped off, it's within date. It's got a little meter on it for pressure. Check it's pointing into the green. This is the perfect time to, if necessary, take a DATCOM reading if I wanted to see if it all matches up. It's got a checklist in there. The mat is down and secured. He says, no, there we are. So I'll just stop that down. That's better. The pedals are all in place. Good. What should I do next?
Put the key in.
No, not yet. I don't want to go anywhere yet. Okay. Just have a look down there for a minute.
Did you? You pulling my leg?
No, seriously, that's why I'm just slapping it on. I just fell, see how they were tired. Okay, so sorry, Tony. It's quite noisy. So back in here, I've got the master switched on now. I just double checked everything else was switched off. Everything else is
Doubt my previous student.
everything's switched off, etc. I can see those fuel gauges look like we've got some fuel in there corresponding to what I think is in the aircraft. What should I check now? I've turned the battery on.
Lights.
Lights.
Yeah. I mean, what lights?
Strobe, nav lights.
Yes, I could do all of that whilst I'm here. If I turn the strobe light on, or the beacon, as sometimes it's called. Yep, that's working nicely. I'm going to turn that off. I can turn the nav lights on. I'm going to flick the switch, and of course, I guess somebody should run around. So I've got a green one, red one. Now just verifies that's on. I've got it. Yes, we have. Yeah. Yep, that's working nicely. And then how about what else we've got lights wise? Warning lights to check. Yeah, I'll do that in a second. And landing
lights.
So there we are. Flick them on, and they're not working. Yeah, I've got the master on. I'll flick the landing light on.
And the clutch.
Yeah, they're wired with the clutch. And my understanding, of course, was these are now LEDs, so they don't have a high current drain.
You're thinking they're going to come?
It's going to get really noisy in a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah, I might have to go indoors just for a short period of time. They used to be, I got it, I'm pretty sure they were at least 100-watt bulb each. You've got 200 watts bulbs on a pretty small, so it's wired through the clutch. So I could just engage the clutch, or I could, if I don't want the clutch to run, if I pull the clutch circuit breaker like that, then I can engage the clutch, and now, ta-da, two of them. far as I'm aware, of all 22s and 44s are exactly the same. They're all like that, all wired through the clutch. So just, I think there's a it back, press the same back in, and turn it off. Good. Now, of course, the nav lights and oh, that's so nice. Does it say lit on there?
Yep.
Okay. Thanks, Tony. Doing a cracking job. The nav lights and lanyard wouldn't necessarily stop you from flying. It would be good to have them working, of course. Far more critical at night, isn't it? That would stop you then. But during the daylight, if you found one didn't work, well, it's a bright day. Not really going to impact, is it, particularly? So we're always kind of looking for things that are either obviously wearing out, breaking down, or not actually working. Okay, so I've done that. Now, yes, we're finally getting onto the good old warning lights, aren't we, on the instrument panel? Some will already be on, things like the alternator and the oil light, you can see. I could just, if I wanted to, just flick the governor off and back on, just to check that bulb works. What else can I check right now in here?
Low RPM.
Yay! Well done, Sophie. It's going to make you jump. I'm sorry. But if I lift the collective, yeah, I can see the light and horn works. It doesn't necessarily tell me worse than 97% on and off, but at least I know the bulb works and the horn actually works right now. Cool. Otherwise, I've got to, and I can do the rotor brake if I really, really wanted to. Ta-da. The brake light's just hiding behind just down there. And then finally get to those test buttons. Only got 4 on the R22. And of course, I'm going to put on the lights on the instrument panel. Main rotor temp, main rotor chip, tail rotor chip, and low fuel. Did it work?
Didn't see
Let me
it.
press it again. Did it work?
No.
No.
What? Well, that's no good, is it, Tony? How am I going to get home tonight?
At the 44.
What am I doing wrong?
You know from his cheery demeanour, he's trying luring you into a trap. 22. It's the same as the 44.
So what am I doing wrong, Tony? I'm pushing and letting go too quick.
Ah,
Because the others work straight away. Look, if I just press those quickly,
yeah.
look, I can get disco lights on the go. But that low fuel, I need to press and
Hold.
hold
Yeah.
because there's the delay on there. So
Yes.
if the fuel slops around in the tank, it doesn't make the light flicker until it's actually down on the low side of things. And that's occasionally that does happen. Somebody says it's not working. You pressed and held. Yeah, I pressed and held it. Yeah. Sometimes you have to do it in 5 seconds. So when they're brand new, it's about 5 seconds. As this, weirdly enough, this delay wears out. I don't know how it wears out, but over time, eventually you press them, they come on instantaneously. This has got a delay of about, it's actually slightly longer just now, but now it's about 1. It's almost instant now. I've just pressed it again. So they do change over time. Bizarre. Yep, they started with about 5 second delay. Okay, anything else I want to test whilst I've got the mask on? We've done landing lights, nav lights, strobe or anti-collision or beacon, whatever you wish to call it. The red flashy one at the back that can sometimes be red and white. On this one, we've done the rotor brake, governor, oil light, alternator light, low RPM, low fuel, turret chips. I've done the starter motor. This is the only one we did turn the key to actually test it. Mirror chip, mirror temp, and the clutch light. Did actually see that come on earlier as well just now. So I'm happy that apart from the starter light, they're all working. Cool. You could go even further than this. What about the radio? I don't really want to get this all kind of up and running, as it were, and find the radio's not working. So I could just quickly switch it on if I wanted to, just to double check and see if it illuminate, or get it set up as necessary, those things. So there's more than potentially what's on the checklist. The checklist really is just about making sure it is fit to fly. It isn't necessarily about these electric bits and bobs, is it? We could do. Could set it up. Could make sure the iPad's working. All those sorts of things as well. Good. Now, so we're going to check before we go flying as well anyway. But again, whilst I've got the mask on, I could just have a quick look at the other gauges that rely on the power just to see if they're reading something and making some common sense. They're not got some obscure readings on them. And again, let's say we are meant to do this before we kind of start the engine, but there's one, it won't be any good at the moment, particularly. But there's something I really would want to look at, especially if it's still in the hangar before I've wheeled it out. Let's just imagine this is sitting in the hangar right now. First flight of the day. Something I might want to check for accuracy.
Clock. The compass.
The altimeter?
R22.
Yes. So again, who said that?
I thought maybe the altimeter.
Yeah, it doesn't rely on the battery though. So I've got the battery, the master, the only battery it's got. Oh, it says master battery. No, it is the only battery. It's battery or only battery. So that, of course, that doesn't rely on the battery. What I'm after is let's say it won't be any good at the moment because it's run. Bear with. It's the car peak gauge versus the outside air temperature gauge. If this was in the hangar, first flight day, they really ought to match. Because if you wheel the helicopter out, this one changes quickly, but that one doesn't. They want them then to settle down. Can you hear okay? So that plane's just started up.
Barely now.
All right, well, pop inside and until that plane's gone. I'll grab that a minute. I'd say, yeah, we'll nip inside briefly whilst that plane does whatever it's going to do. Yeah. Back out we go. The planes. Are there any others looking like they're going to go? No, not at the moment. I must leave this open. Careful, Sue. Grab an arm. Grab Tony's arm.
Once we get that there.
Well, it's nice now. Look, the sun's out.
That's it.
That's cool.
It's not hugely dissimilar, although we're not relying on temperature, to the fuel gauges, is it? If we can dip the contents of the tank, it'd be a very good idea to do that and match that to or see how well the gauges are matched to the contents. And with a bit of luck, you should usually find there's a little bit more in the fuel tank than it says on the gauge. It's the better way around to have it, isn't it? You don't want the gauges overreading.
How do you check on the Cabri? Because that has a bladder. How do we check the fuel contents on that? Or we just have to rely on the MLI?
You get some and drain all the fuel out and pour it all back in again.
Okay.
Sorry, John, that's a very poor joke. Yeah, I know it's a tricky one because you don't dip the fuel tank on the Cabri. Unfortunately, we are semi-reliant on the fact that the sender, the capacitance sender, or the ability for it to detect the fuel is incredibly accurate. But you can look inside the fuel tank. It's got a nice big aperture, so be careful you don't poke your torch and drop the torch in the fuel tank. But if you look in there, you can get an idea of how much fuel is in there in relation to the gauge. So at least you get a rough idea whether it's telling the truth or not. But yeah, we don't dip the tanks on the Cabri. Same with the Jet Ranger. You just have a physical look inside the tank to see if it looks about right. You start to get used to it. When it reaches the kind of like the bottom layer, it's somewhere around about sort of 20, 30 gallons of fuel, and then it's easy. When it's at the top, guess what? It's full up. Hey, simple as that. Right, where were we? Yes, outside a temperature gauge. Sorry, and yes, I was getting Tony, wasn't I?
Sure, you're right. Yeah. Okay.
Is that big enough, or do you want the big?
No, that's fine. I'll live with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with the master on, yes, we were just checking the accuracy of those. Anything else? Yeah, there might be a couple of other bits and bobs you could check. You could just check the headsets. It's always a good idea to make sure they actually work before you go flying. Of course, if you stick them on and the aircraft's running and you discover they're not working properly, yeah, you'll shut down. But you could save a lot of bother, couldn't you? By just double checking they work before you go flying. Cool. Can anybody else think of anything if they've got the master on? I wasn't moved on. All right. So again, we're kind of just still working in this area, aren't we? Screen's clean, everything's set up as you wanted, nothing foul in the controls down there, fire extinguisher, done all that part of it. Then we get onto the side of the helicopter. No, we've gone. Hey, what have you spotted?
No.
Something interesting. No. Okay. Yeah. So I'm looking at the area, making sure there's no excessive kind of in the bodywork of the aircraft. And I come across this thing here. What's this? It's the pair. Hold on to it. Yeah, it is the air intake for
the carpet.
There's another one around the other side, but it doesn't look quite like that. Who said that?
That's for the carpet.
It's not carpet intake. It's the exhaust is there. The exit of the exhaust pipe, but there's the exhaust.
It's literally the air going into the filter.
Yeah, so that's the cold air intake for the air filter for the engine's going to use. It's going to add the fuel to it. So I'm checking, of course, it's got no obstructions on it, not full up with grass and debris. The hose, although we can now see it down here, doesn't look like it's collapsing inside, because that would not be good news either. You're going to choke it. Good. And I could, whilst I'm here, I guess I could move into that area. Would make some sense, wouldn't it, if I wanted to? I'm going to come back up here in a second. So we won't go over every single little detail. But I will ask certain bits and pieces. So I'm having first of all, just a general look around, just to make sure there's no obvious signs of anything hanging off it, falling off it. And then I could look at things in far more detail. So I want to check all of the tubes all nice and straight, no sign of bends in them or kinks of any description, and not excessively corroded, especially around the actual joints themselves where the welds are. I'm just going to concentrate on this area first of all, looking to make sure there's no distortion to the firewall of the helicopter. And looking at the hoses, making sure they're in and secure. And then I come across a black box. If you can see that, get my torch out. There's a black box in here with a couple of wires coming off the bottom of it. There it is. Hey, that's it. That's the one. That one there. Tony's got. It's like, what's that? It's where everybody says, "Oh, I've never seen that before."
So a transponder.
Oh no, not transponder.
So I've got wires coming in.
I wouldn't expect, to be honest, everybody to know. It would be nice.
Is it a mag?
Magnetos are a bit higher up. They're up there.
Oh, okay.
Right colour, kind of right shape.
See the ignition box.
Oh, we're getting pretty close now. What do you mean, John?
We see. I think be for the main. I don't know. Does his have? It doesn't have a double ignition system, though, does it?
Yeah. It's got two magnetos. If that's what you mean.
Oh, okay.
Well, I'll put you all out. It's commonly known as a starter vibrator or a shower of sparks.
Oh.
What that is when you crank the engine over, the magnetos that are self-generating. So the magnetos, there's one this side. This is actually the left one up here. That's the magneto. This shower of sparks. So when you crank the engine over, the magnetos aren't really turning quick enough to generate enough power to generate enough of a spark to start the engine. Not really. It needs a bit of help. That electronic unit is really just a bit like a capacitor in most respects, and just via your battery current, etc., creates a whole load of sparks. This is the kind of the crude version of it, and sends it into one of the magnetos that now uses that to get your engine started.
They've got that on the 44.
If I unplug that, it might start, but I very much doubt it.
Right.
That'll be it. It won't start generally.
Yeah, it should have it on.
Yep, 44's got one as well. Yep, absolutely. Shower of sparks. Because that's exactly what it does. Just creates a whole load of sparks. And it got diverted through. And it goes through.
Paul, how do you write that down? Can you spell it, please?
Oh, shower of sparks. Well, I think usually in the checklist you'll read it as a vibrator. Okay. We kind of get an idea of this is how the kind of part of the mechanism that starts the engine, it all starts to click into place, because you suddenly think, Oh, I see. Because Paul keeps going on about, if you don't let go of the key, it won't actually run properly. Because when you go to crank the engine, you crank it round, you're kind of only using the shower of sparks through one magneto, and it's retarded ignition as well. So the engine will not actually run properly until you let go of the key.
Which is when the second magneto kicks in.
Which it all kind of kicks into play properly, and boom, away you go. So we sometimes hear this, you know, people start the engine, and you can hear it, it's trying to run, but they haven't heard that, and they're not letting go of the key. Just let go of the key, and it will run. It'll be fine. Kind of right. Or if the batteries get a bit flat, we're a bit crafty, James and I, we now know that you can just a bit, if you can crank the engine over and let go of the key at the perfect time, it will probably fire up. But if you hold the key, it won't work. It won't be spinning fast enough to have enough current. But if you time it just right, crank it and let go, boom, away it goes. So there we are, because we've got a little bit of knowledge now of how this unit works.
Got it.
Yeah, good stuff. Right, okay, so back in here. So I'm having a good look around. So I'll just pick on bits and pieces. I did say that we're currently around the right-hand side of the helicopter, but I said to Tony that this is the left magneto.
Because of the way the engine's been put in. It's the left
No,
side.
they put it on the wrong side. So yeah, so on an R22 and a 44, it's commonly known the engine is in back to front, because if it had a propeller, it'd be down that end where the fan is. So this is the back of the engine, that's the front. It's just in backwards. Yeah, they just didn't realise. I put it in reverse. So hence the left magneto. All right, looking around, rocker covers and all the rest of those sorts of things. So I'm not going to go over every single tiny point, but I've come across, and this is a common question, I've come across some pipe work here. Look, there's one there, and there's one there, and I bet if I look around the other side, there's another two. What are they? I can see spark plugs. I can see exhaust manifolds, if you like, exhaust pipes coming out the cylinder heads. I can see inlet pipes or inlet manifolds. What the heck are these?
They are oil pipes.
How do you mean?
Are they engine oil pipe?
Yes, good, yeah. But what sort of feed or?
Yes, I'm going to say feed.
Oh, I thought you were going to get that. They're drain pipes.
Ah,
Yeah, so if you follow them round, you'll notice they go back. It might be quite tricky to see on my telephone. They actually run around and they go back into the sump of the engine, which is where all the oil is held, where it's then going to get picked up via the strainer, through the pump, through the oil filter, pumped back around the engine again, into various places, including the rockers that are hidden under here. I still have this acrylic one, they won't see through them, watch it running. And it just dribbles back down and goes round again. So there's no pressure behind these. It's just purely drain tubes. It's a very common examiner question. I'm looking around and I see this. Oh, what's this? It's like a bit of heat shield. It does look like a heat shield actually, but there's there's an orange hose attached to it, and this orange hose goes to the grey box at the bottom. So what's the grey box at the bottom? Because it might be able to answer it that way around.
air filter?
Yeah, I mean, strictly speaking, it's not the filter itself because it's inside the paper element in there, but it's the air filter box, if you like, isn't the housing. But yeah, absolutely, the air filter housing. And it's got two pipes going into it, big pipe, little pipe. The big pipe, oh, hang on, that goes back over here. Oh, that's fresh air. So this one is, yeah, coming from,
Exhaust.
yes. So the carb heat scoop, it's usually labelled carb heat scoop on the checklists because it's scooping the heat from around the exhaust pipe, which operates pretty damn hot sometimes, up to about 600, 700, 800 degrees, and is sucking it into the air filter. And the carb heat knob just purely moves a flap inside here that covers one over or the other or anywhere in between. Simple as that. And it's operated by this. Inside here, there's a single strand cable that goes through to the carb heat knob, and they break every now and then.
Oh, right.
And get stuck. And I've often wondered why it's not sprung loaded to automatically go and cover the cold, so you've always got carb heat, because that brings about a problem when you want to make a descent if it's broken and you're stuck on the cold position. Anyway, that's for another day. Okay, so there we are. Carb heat scoop. And so in the checklist, it usually says, for instance, A is in there, obviously, but B is it secure. And that's why you can kind of see me giving it a bit of a pull and a flick to making sure it's not loose. because it is only held on by two decent stainless steel Jubilee. I thought it was broken just saying. Jubilee clips. That's not necessarily going to go anywhere, is it? If they weren't attached, but it wouldn't be in its right position. It'd be vibrating and rub away at the metal, etc., etc. So yeah, just a little ping. But please make sure it's not too hot when you do that. It's cold now. Yeah, good. Okay, so we're still in this area, making sure things like the exhaust itself, it's not cracked. It's common to find, or, you know, this is where it might crack around this area here. I've seen that before. And you wouldn't necessarily know yourself as the pilot when you run it, but people outside can hear the difference because it blows around that area. But when you consider this engine is just a smidgen under 6 litres, that is a tiny exhaust box to dampen down the noise, isn't it, compared to what we have in our cars. We've got several mufflers on our cars, got a whole load of wadding inside them as well to really dampen it down. We've got one little exhaust box here. Big noisy thing. Just all right, okay, so I'm still in this area, so I might as well stay down here. What else have we got, Tony? We've got one of these things, got one of those things. Got so much good post. So what's this one? This is an easy one. Starter. And what are we checking? I mean, it's there.
First of all, to make sure the cables are in place.
Yeah, what we don't want is don't pull the cables around too much. No. Every time somebody pulls them, you slowly weaken possibly the connector. Yeah. So only kind of touches it where if you think it's got a problem, don't always just yank on everything because you know, HT cables, you'll slowly wear them out or loosen the connection, which won't be so good. So it looks pretty good. So I'm not going to prop and poke it. All the cable ties are in place. But what you can do is, if you want to, is get hold of the starter motor and give it a push and a pull because it shouldn't go anywhere. It won't hurt you. So make sure it's not loose. It's only held on by 4 bolts, 1, 2, 3, 4. And they're not locked either. There's often a torque stripe on it, so we can see it's not rotated. I've never found, but I have been told people have discovered, you know, loose bolts on them in the past. Right. But you could just pull it and just check it's not loose. We could look at things like the condition of the actual the gear on the end of it, the flywheel. We can see part of the alternator belt. We can see the bottom part of the drive shaft down in this area. And then we've got this. What's this?
That's the oil cooler.
It is the oil cooler, yeah. Now, it looks pretty clean from this side. The way these are held on, there's not a particularly strong bracket up there. So as long as you're not too aggressive with it, if you hold onto these pipes and just give them a bit of a pull, and we're just making sure it's not loose, you'll soon know if one of the brackets are broken because it will move. It shouldn't move. So I'm not using a lot of force. I'm just giving it just a little wobble, nothing too much. You could push it there if you wanted to. Just to check, I have seen them. I think I've got one in the flying school, broken mounting, to show you what can happen. And it was loose, but you'd only know by doing that. In the post flap, what's in there? Yeah, that's the top side of the oil cooler. So whilst the bottom side looked lovely and clean, of course, the air's being blown from above through the bottom. So you'll find all the debris in there. And yeah, it's starting to get a little bit clogged up, as you can see, from all the dust and muck around at the moment.
So the cut the grass.
Yeah, if there's grass in there, you carefully put your hand in there to remove as much as possible. What you don't want to do is bend all those little fins in there, those little heat sinks. You don't want to rub your fingers and try to scrape the. A, they're pretty sharp, but B, if you bend them all over, you're starting to reduce its ability for the air to pass through and its cooling abilities. Don't bend them over. To clean them out properly, you have to kind of blast them from underneath, really, to blow it back through and vacuum it out and those sorts of things. Okay, there's a little bit more down here. I just want to show you something very important, which is up on this side, Tony, up through there. Can you see the telly? Oh yeah, pretty much so. There's an orange. Yeah, come around this side, really, Tony. There, that orange sticker up there. Can anybody tell me what that is?
It's a teletemp.
Yay, good. What does it do?
It just lets you know if that particular point has gotten too hot.
Yeah, you might not be able to see it on my phone, but it's got markings on it, and it says the first box is 60 degrees Celsius, then 66, 71, and so forth. And what happens is if it reaches that temperature, it makes the box go black and it stays black. So we can see what's been occurring. And that doesn't mean to say that if it's hit the first box 60 degrees is a bad thing. I'm not surprised it does that when it's hot outside. But if it keeps doing it and it gets hotter and hotter, what could it suggest?
We're in the friction working.
Yeah, because generally, you know, friction is causing the heat. And we don't really want friction in bearings because they have a habit of breaking. Yeah, they could let go. So a lower sheave bearing, as it's often called, we're checking the teletemp on it to make sure it's not got a trend of getting hot. And usually what you'll find, the teletemps, if none of them are black, if that's the teletemp, there'll be a line beyond the first one at the beginning. If the first one goes black, you tend to find there's a line. So there's normally a line drawn past the black box because it means that the engineers, etc., or somebody's aware of it. This is where it got to. If it crosses that line, you kind of need to mention it and say, look, it's gone past that line. And just, it's not verbatim, but as a general kind of rule of thumb, roughly speaking, 3 of them is okay if they're black, especially in the height of summer. But 4 is not looking too good now. This is not good. In winter time, they're normally always just white, but as soon as it starts to warm up, lower and the upper sheave bearings have a habit of going up to on the hot day. Last summer, we're hitting 3 on them quite quickly, no problem at all because of the heat. It's like 40 degrees, isn't it?
Do they get replaced in every service, every 50 hours? I always wondered when they actually get replaced.
It's a good question. It's discoloration because they.
They go over
discoloration because they'll discolor with UV if they're coming off, or of course if that component's been replaced. Otherwise, I don't think they normally do replace them as habit. They'd rather leave it to be able to monitor that component to see how far it's gone.
Interesting.
As you can see, that one's been on there for quite a while, that upper one. It's been about 2 box for a long time.
Guys,
okay, that's it. There's potentially more to show you down there, but I'm aware that we'll run out of time. So, kind of covered that part of it, so I might as well come up here, mightn't I, now? And we've got things like fuel tank, it's auxiliary tank. I'm just checking it looks like it's in good condition, it's not dripping all the rest of it. And I'm going to look at the mast in a minute, so I'll just concentrate on this area. Open up the panels. Have a look around here. Now, what does it say there? No step.
Don't put your bag in there.
Yeah, and no stowage or anything along those lines. So be cautious. Don't think, oh, I'll put my torch down because I'm fed up of holding it. But you might forget. That's not a good idea, is it? Or rags or whatever, cleaning cloths or anything like that. Definitely don't step on it. And the reason why they could be confused is because the R44 does have an area here where you can step on it to climb up and check the rotor head. Whereas we're going to check it the other side. There's a step down there on the framework we can utilise to climb up and check the rotor head. So what are we seeing here? We see a lot, yeah, that's right. Because one of the things we don't want to see / smell is
fuel.
Yeah.
We smell.
Yeah. There's a slim chance you might catch a tiny bit from the fuel tank vents, which are where?
Yeah, Malcolm, if you want to stay, I've got my keys. I can do it.
No, well, of course, fuel tank vents, you vent something that's got fluid in it, you don't want to vent it low down, do you?
No. So it'd be
high up. Actually, you can't see them. It's a trick question. Hidden behind there.
Right.
But I did say about you might just about be able to smell possibly maybe some vapour from them.
Got it.
But it shouldn't be like, Oh, well, it stinks of fuel in there because it should not be any fuel in there, should there? It should all be held in the tank. And we can see the drain pipes, the pipe that goes across to the other side. You can also see the main rotor gearbox. This has got things like a teletemp on it. And again, look, none of those boxes are black, although the first one is trying just about. But there you can see there's a very faint line at the beginning of the teletemp to show, yeah, we're aware, none of them have gone black. So we just keep a close eye on that. We can see a fluid level. Now, the fluid levels do depend on quite a number of factors as to where they will sit. Where the helicopter's sitting is leaning even slightly to the left, that level will be low. If it leans slightly to right, that level will be much higher. If it's leaning forward, it doesn't really change that much. If it's leaning back, it doesn't really change that much. If it's cold, it will potentially be low. If it's hot, it'll be slightly higher. So it fluctuates. And even then, randomly, you check it from morning to morning in the same spot in the hangar, it will be different. It's almost like it holds the oil in various places. So some days it'll be slightly higher, some days a bit lower. So how do you know, this often gets asked, is this all right, Paul? You know, the oil level is a little bit low. Is it okay?
Check the oil then. Dipstick.
There's no dipstick.
Oh, there isn't,
there's no dipstick for it. So what would be the common sense or even logical answer to that?
How's the helicopter sitting first and foremost?
Dead level, yep.
Temperature?
Just ambient, it's sat in the hangar all night. Yesterday it was fine, but today it looks a bit lower.
Leaks.
Check no leaks. If you can see a leak, it's probably leaking, that's why it's lower. If there's no leaks, let's look at it again after it's run, for instance, and see if it's the same, changed, etc. So we can monitor those sorts of things. But yeah, hopefully it's a fairly obvious thing. Check for leaks. There's no sign of a leak. It's not some mystery thing. That oil is in there. It can go up the mast a bit, and the rest has got to sort of kind of splash lubricate all that lot. But yeah, otherwise the leaks you would see would be kind of through there underneath it. And what colour is the oil? Got very quiet online. Are they still there? Yeah, everybody's still there online.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, still there.
Because we can't see you.
I don't come off mute now.
Okay. The oil is a dark bluey green colour. So that's what we'd be looking for. If you said, yes, Paul, look, I found it's got an oil leak. Look, it's this sort of weird light colour brown. You'd be like, yeah, well, that's not gearbox oil. Does it smell? Not particularly. Right, that's definitely not gearbox oil because it stinks.
Right.
It's got to, it smells like cat wee. Don't ask me how I know what cat wee smells like. Okay? It smells like cat wee. Yeah, it's got a really, hasn't it? You know what I mean? It's like hyper gear oil, isn't it? It stinks. Weird smell. Okay, so bluey green. I can't see any of that. There's not to be confused with the dye that's in the fuel. Also leaves a blue residue, but it's very different. That's quite a dry, powdery residue almost. Whereas the oil, it will be oil, won't it? Slightly oily, almost slightly sticky. Oh, stinks. Good. Okay. So where is the rotor brake? Because if you have the checklist, it'll be on there at the moment. Keep watching. We're going to perform some magic. You ready? Yeah, good. That's right. You've got to be at just the right angle to be able to see it. I'm stop racing it. So you can see it happening. And it's literally a couple of little brake shoes that clamp on a slightly wider part of the drive shaft, as you can see. Just grips on it. That's it. Which is why we say, please don't hang on the rotor brake when you're stopping the rotors, because you'll either burn the brake out, I think you'll make it catch fire, but it's not going to be good for it. Or some of them, that part that it clamps on is so close to the gearbox output seal or input seal, input seal, the other way around, it can actually damage the seal. Yeah, because it heats it. Yeah, you have to be careful. Yep, because you're generating that much friction and heat there. So, good. So that's where the rotor brake is. That's a good question. How about a yoke flange?
Oh, that's that there.
Yeah.
Which part, Tony?
This here?
Oh, I think you've got your finger on the right part. It's the, yeah. Yoke flange. Well, if we look at the, we have a look at the end of this drive shaft, or the drive shaft itself, here, where this grey bit separates off, that's the yoke flange. This bit here, so you're checking there's no cracks around it. And what it goes into is this sort of goldeny coloured four-pointed star, sometimes known as a star flex coupling, because it flexes and it couples that drive shaft to the gearbox. So it's only attached in two places. And what we've got there for you, you've got kind of like the gearbox with a yoke flange and two mounting points. You've got a drive shaft with two mounting points, and they're attached with that flex coupling in the middle, which means it can flex and move. It needs to. It's like a bit like a universal joint. Really simple one. No bearings, no nothing, no moving parts. Just flexes. And we want to make sure there's no cracks in it. And it's not a completely foolproof method, but if you kind of ping them a bit, in here it's got a bit of a ting to it, which is a good sign. Yes. Yeah, if they've got cracks, a lot of metal becomes a bit dull in sound, yeah, when you're pinging it. Yoke flange.
Ah, yoke flange and the flex coupling.
Yes,
but which one is which?
We already
It's
know.
easy.
Oh, you've already done that. I like to call that one.
Okay, then whilst we're in here, because it is quite good, interesting stuff, where does the information for the rotor RPM come from?
Tamsin loves that one.
I'll give you some. Do you want a multiple choice?
Yes.
There's a little sensor up there, a little light sensor that notices the flickering of the blades and counts them. A little optical sensor. Do you like that one?
No.
No spoilers for the quiz coming up.
Done by the pilot. That's it.
That one.
Let's twiddle a little knob and make the RPM read. Like that
Tiny little man in there.
It's done by a very fancy, very expensive box of tricks, electronic, relies on 12 volts, or I should say electrical voltage from either the battery or the alternator, that very cleverly counts all the RPMs and then via a computer works it out and puts it onto your gauge.
They're the options.
Hang on, there's one more.
Oh, good.
I don't fancy that one.
How about something a lot more simple? Maybe if you pass a magnet over a little pickup and create a little kind of like electrical conduction, a Hall effect, we call it. And that pulsing, I tell you what, actually, we just count that. We can put that onto a gauge.
D. We go with D.
D. Look at that. Your powers of deduction are amazing. Yeah, so it's just done by a little pickup, a little Hall effect. So it's just a magnet passing by just a literally coil of wire. Not that dissimilar to how magnetos kind
Is that
of
in
work.
there, is it?
Yes, it is. Good. And they are. They're not easy to point out with a telephone. But I can stick my finger on it. See this silvery thing down here? That's the pickup. There's actually another one just hiding behind the yoke plan. Oh, there's another one there. See it? And on the back, what you really can't see, but I can feel, there it is, it's on this one. There's a magnet. It's just on the back here, on the back of the yoke flange. I mean, I was just there. There's a magnet. Yes. I'll tell you why one of our examiners loves that question. It's because she found one fallen off one day before they went flying. Now, had that come off in flight, for instance, what would have happened is your rotor RPM would have gone like this. And potentially, said inexperienced pilot / student, whatever, might have panicked. I've had it before. One of my best friends, I pulled the circuit breaker on in training for the rotor RPM. And the needle goes down here. He said, Paul, what's up? What's up? I haven't really said his name to him. What's up? He said, the rotors have stopped turning. We're down with the circuit cramp, and I'm just laughing. I'm looking up, going, yeah, look at that. So they have. What are you do? He said. What think they to do?
It really stopped.
I hope you've noticed it before it's got that.
Yeah.
Yes, are you sure they stopped turning? Yes, look. I said, yes, look. You see going,
Oh, yeah.
brilliant.
It's still in the air.
Yes, it's still turning. They're fine. It's just, I thought the circuit breaker. Oh, but maybe one of the pickups has got.
Yeah, that's simulated.
Same one with the engine one.
Yeah,
Engine
good.
What's this pipe here?
I don't know. I hope you're going to not ask you that. Right. So why is there a random pipe? Seems to have no end to it.
It's like those camel packs, you know, that runners have. If you get thirsty during nature, have a little sip.
It's not the fuel tank, Ben. We've already decided.
That's the static tube.
It is.
There you go.
Good.
Yeah.
What's that, boss?
I taught him that.
Well, it's the static part of the airspeed indicator. So you've got the pitot tube at the front.
Yes, good. So airspeed, anything that relies on a static source. So it could be airspeed, altimeter, VSI. Yep, it all comes from there because it needs to know what the ambient pressure is, but without it being influenced by airflow. Now, a lot of helicopters, like the 44, there's one round here and there's one round the other side. So even if you fly slightly sideways, this one gets a little bit of dynamic pressure, but it's balanced out by the other side, for instance. Whereas an R22 is hidden in here to try and minimize the turbulent air and all the rest of it, that could kind of maybe end up being a bit dynamic as well. Yes, that's the static. And you're meant to check that there's no blockages and bugs and whatnot. Yep, that pipe is quite long. It goes from there, around here, around here, around here, around here. So you just check it's not bunged up at the end or crimped over or something daft like that. And just so you know, because your altimeter would do what if that was blocked?
What was your altimeter?
Underread, overread. It would.
Yes, I do.
It would underread or overread.
Or not move at all.
The altimeter would not move at all unless you twiddled the knob. Yeah, so the altimeter just wouldn't work. And the VSI would
potentially not move at all either.
Yeah.
What would the airspeed indicator do?
I've already done 2.
Is anybody going to be brave enough to say what the airspeed indicator would do if this got blocked right now?
Not move at all.
Oh, it would move.
Oh.
Because don't forget, the airspeed indicator needs to measure dynamic pressure, but to do so, it's got to get total pressure and subtract
static
one from the other. Yes.
So
yeah, it'd be fine down at the height we're flying at right now, of course. But as soon as you go up, it traps this pressure that's going to hold it back slightly, isn't it? So yes, unfortunately, as you go up, the dynamic pressure won't be quite as powerful as what it would be down here.
Right.
So it doesn't move the needle around so much. So it underreads. It works, but it underreads. So, but yeah, your altimeter, no change. VSI, no change. Good. So you soon know if it's blocked. We've got obviously drive belts. Very important, aren't they? How could we check those? I think we're never going to get around the whole helicopter, are we? Yeah, good. That's right. So you can kind of, sometimes they're a bit sticky and you have to put your fingers in and you can sort of move them around. Well, this is weird. Why is this slipping round, this pulley? Surely it's meant to turn that shaft, isn't it?
No, the clutch not engaged, is it?
The clutch tightens the belts. Would you say, Dawn?
Sprag clutch.
Yes, good. The Sprag clutch. So the free wheel unit, of course, will allow it to turn one way, but if I then try and turn it the other way, it's going to grip the shaft.
Oh.
There we are.
That's right. There's no.
Yeah. Nobody's that tall.
Waving at the moment.
Good. So we've already seen actually the Sprag clutch is not locked onto the shafts. That's a good thing. We'll start off. I've spun them around, have a look at the belts. I've got grubby already.
So good check.
You're going to wipe it on Tony.
Nearly.
So getting grubby hands is supposed to be a sign of a good age check, isn't it? No, it just means you need to go wash your hands. Yeah, that's right. If you've come back from checking the helicopter and you're clean, you've either been to the bathroom already or you haven't checked it, or you've maybe worn gloves, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's right. Okay, so yeah, we can spin them around and have a look at the condition of the belts, make sure there's nothing nasty fraying, cracked on the back or anything daft like that. And make sure they're not covered in oil as well, which is a sign of something else. Another bearing, upper sheet bearing, look more yoke flanges, more flex couplings, ting, 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 all sounds good. And a lot of things have got white stripes on them to show that the bolts haven't turned. They're not started to come undone or shifted or moved in any way, shape or form, that kind of thing. Creek bolts. Lots of wiring, it's all attached, it's not getting in the way. Now, one of the things we want to be really interested in and making sure it's okay is A, the condition of the belts, B, a bit of a crude check as to how slack they are right now. And if I push those belts in, it will roughly get to about here on my fingers. Just gives me an idea of they're about the right tension. If I can push my fingers into here, that's way too loose. If I can't push them in much, it's a little on the tight side, but I can push those in, yeah, typically to my knuckles. That's about right. It's pretty good, just as a bit of a ballparky thing. Otherwise, of course, it's when you engage the clutch the rotors should begin to turn within 5 seconds because it gives an indication of how slackened off they are. But why are we so interested in how slack they are? I mean, we're interested in how tight they are when we're running because we want to make sure they're pretty damn tight, otherwise we can't go flying. But why how slack they are at the moment?
Well, if they've stretched.
Well, I mean, they will naturally wear over time anyway, and it has to be, the actuator is adjusted to go to a certain, when it detensions, to slacken off to a certain point, and that has to be altered over time as the belts slowly wear or stretch, etc.
Well, if they're tight before you've started, does that mean it hasn't been shut down properly?
Possibly, good, yeah, absolutely. And it was going to really struggle to start because it's got the loading of the rotors on it, on the starter motor, which is not good for it. But them being a little bit too tight wouldn't worry me anywhere near as much as them being way too slack.
Because they could jump off the...
Yes, because they can jump the pulley, which potentially has caused nothing to do with us, but it has potentially caused an accident in the past, sort of thing, because they've been too slack. And so when you start that engine, they can jump and move. And we've got no idea that's happened necessarily. I mean, I'd hope if you open the door, there might be a little bit of sound. But anyway, there we go. Yeah, so they can jump. So they mustn't be too slack. They can jump off, and then you'll have a failure in flight, for instance. So you wouldn't necessarily know about it. Good, good. So from here, I can see by looking, they are sitting nicely on the pulleys and lined up. And then we do a similar sort of thing with the Cadbury. We actually check and feel the belt sitting on the pulley correctly because it's got lots of little ribs and it could just hop one over. It wouldn't be obvious to the untrained eye, but if you feel it, you can feel like this, that it's sitting within the pulley itself. Okay. Particularly, I mean, tail cone attachment points. Hopefully all that lot's pretty self-explanatory when you get to the checklist. Remember, I'm not going to show you every single tiny little bit. We're just going to focus on certain areas. But you get the idea. We are looking each time at a certain piece, not just a random, or go around just a stab here and a stab there. In great detail at each point. Okay, so let's just say we've kind of checked everything around there. I'm going to shut the flaps up because it's not a good idea to leave them open. And just a little point to note, these are not heavy, but I tell you, if your head's in there and that comes down and whacks you in the head, it does smart slightly. So if it's windy, just keep your hand on it, just stop from flanging you in the head. And as I said, don't leave them open, even if you think, oh, I'm only going to go around there and come back again. It's like doors. If you're doing this on, yes, if it's strong wind or you're operating on the helipad, it can easily rip a door off and smash them and all the rest of it. So we'll just latch those down. Don't forget them. And on Robinson's, look, the latches are all horizontal, not vertical. So quick glance can see that that's already all latched up. Right, quick recap. So we've done in there, done down there. We've looked at the kind of skids as well. I know we haven't gone right down here, but I might want to come to that in a second. We've done up here. So I did just point out, might as well have a quick look. Skid tubes all look like they're there, they're not bent, they don't look excessively corroded, there can't see any cracks around here. The mounting points for the wheels are not broken. This is just anti-slip tape. You won't find it on all of them, but it's in case if somebody decides to step on the skids, these are really slippery. Otherwise, you can slide them and hurt yourself. So one of the things on the checklist is the skid shoes. What are the skid shoes? I see these skids, these tubes. I'll tell you what, they don't actually sound that thick metal. We do running landings and all sorts on them, and actually. Doesn't actually look like it's completely... Yeah, there's daylight under this skid tube. And when we get right down, suddenly we notice, look here, there's something here on the skid. Not on here.
Are they carbide shoes?
Yeah, they are, that's right. And the front ones, you can just about see them as they go around the curve. You can feel them. Just here. Now, in this country, we tend not to do running landings and takeoffs on tarmac. But in many other countries, so we do it on the grass. Many other countries won't do it on the grass, they do it on tarmac, and they wear down. So they've got to be inspected every now. Because what you don't want is it wearing the actual skid tube itself. So our running landings on grass, just simply take the paint off, and you can usually see it just start to remove the paint where we run along the grass. But it won't wear the shoes down. Literally, they never need to be replaced unless you do those running landing and takeoffs on tarmac. Righty-ho. Okay. So whilst I'm here, I'm just going to have a visual look at this mast, this side, this cowling, and just making sure it's not round. I'm not just tapping it for the fun of it. What am I kind of looking for? Or I give it a bit of a, just in case there's anyone loose. It's one of the quickest, easiest ways to find out if one of these screws is loose, because you'll suddenly notice a bit of play in it, and possible little fret marks that have been vibrating, and it just creates a bit of brown black dust from there. That's looking good. Fuel cap is on, possibly dipper tanks, all those sorts of things. Sample fuels we haven't done yet, and just checking under here that it's not all chewed up, it's not had contact, because that would show us it's had not a very nice landing. Aerials are attached, not falling off. Tail cone. So also tell me what sort of construction it is.
Yeah. See.
Oh, it's pretty good. Well, it's a wine stuff. That's right. It's a single, although ironically it isn't, because it's made up of that.
Yeah.
Isn't it semi?
It's a mono. And mono.
Is it a semi monocoque?
No, it's monocoque.
Is it just
monocoque? Yeah. So there's no framework in there. There's formers that help hold its shape, but its shape is its strength. And there we are. It's a single shape monocoque construction, but it is actually made up of individual pieces. So we're just looking to make sure there's no obvious signs of any sort of separation of the rivets, etc., from it. What else are we looking for on this monocoque construction? Yes. Now, they could be dented, and if the dents are in certain places, it's okay.
Yeah. But you wouldn't want dents around the rivets, would you?
Yeah, generally that's correct. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, you don't want dents around there. So some places you can maybe have a slightly bigger dent than others, but you wouldn't necessarily know by how much. So it needs to be checked out. So we look at that, and indeed, up here, we've actually got some dents in it. Look up here, they've all been inspected. This happened quite a while ago. Nobody knows exactly how it happened, but it's been made by the rotor blades. Wow. But not during a landing, it would seem, because it doesn't appear like they've struck them with horizontal movement. They've struck them with vertical movement. I think what happened was it was parked outside overnight, and it's probably something quite big flew quite close to it, and they've literally hit the tail boom twice. Yeah, they've whacked into the tail boom. But it's all been measured and checked, and it just doesn't look nice. Yeah, there's a couple of little dents just up there.
Just about.
Yeah. Obviously, making sure things like anti-collision now, they do often, look, it actually rotates, but it's not going to come off. It's not unusual to not to be completely secure on there, as it were. One of these tiddly little ones, this is a...
No, that's the stationary bar for the rotor to remind you.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
Yes, to stop people from trying to pass underneath that area. I mean, it's just beggars belief everybody would want to walk under there with the thing running, but there we go. That's what it's for. Unfortunately, horizontal stabilizers, yes, making sure there's no signs of any excessive dents. It is not unusual to find there's a little repair of some description because they get hit in the hangers, in particular, hanger ratchets often known. So that's
Folly had one just about there on the front.
Yeah, that's right. So sometimes in the front, very commonly here, up there on the 44s, because they can't spot them, they hit the doorways of hangers and things, and they're wheeling them in. Very common. And, we don't be aggressive with it, but there's absolutely no harm in giving this a bit of a push and a pull. Think of the stresses it goes under in flight when we're yawing and God knows what else. I want to make sure it's not loose, don't I? There's no obvious signs of any problems. The stinger, which protects tail from hitting the ground, the turret blades, you can see. And if you know your aircraft, if it's nice and smooth underneath, and one day it's very rough, there's a chance maybe it's had a bit of a dodgy landing. It has actually struck the ground, maybe, but there's potential other reasons why it could be slightly rough under there. All sorts of things like just making sure our lights are not loose. I'm not going to pull hard on that because I've got a couple of little bolts on it, but it's definitely not loose because anything back here that could be loose or falls off goes where when it's running? Yeah, straight to the tail rotor, isn't it? because of course it's sucking in there from that direction, blowing it that way. So anything this side goes straight into the tail. That's why I've just double checked that is definitely not loose. I'm going to come off through the tail rotor. Same with if there was any loose wiring around here, maybe, you know, something like one of these clips is really, really loose falling off. I don't want that to go through there either. Nice and easy to see the gearbox oil in this one. Now, the older ones had a very small little dome sight glass, and sometimes it's hard to see if there's any oil in there. It was perfectly acceptable, especially if it's on hard ground, you can do this, but to just pull the tail down. If I kept my arm over, I can easily pull that down and hold on to it. And what you would see is if that filled up that little sight glass with oil, that was acceptable, because otherwise you'd think there's no oil in there. There's not a lot of oil, but these ones are much easier to spot. But actually, whilst I'm here, I can see straight through that little window. And if notice, I could turn the tail rotor blades round and actually see, so if I make sure I don't hit anybody or anything. Once again in here, you can see the tail rotor drive shaft, yoke flanges, etc. But we're looking at the bolts, making sure the torque stripe's gone across them. They're all in place, they're not loose. All looks good. Gives me a chance just to have a quick look at the upper surface of the tower. And they can't do this on the 44. Why not use it anyway? You can put the wheels on it. It's much easier to pull down, but these are quite easy to pull down. Because what I might do is just make that tail sit a tiny bit lower now. And you might think, oh no, this is no good. But actually, if I kind of give it just a bit of a push, it settles back down to where it was. It's not being aggressive or hard. I've just been gentle with it. Not trying to scratch or anything. Get the bugs off. Good, okay. There are the blades. Yes, 2 of. What do we
There's no dents, it's all attached, nothing splitting.
Yes, all those sorts of hopefully common sense things. So I won't go through every single little thing. But they are made by more or less one piece of metal folded and then stuck at the back, riveted across about here. It's about there somewhere, I don't seem to remember, but they're ground down so you can't see them. We want to make sure there's no signs of any cracks in them here. The root of the blade, this piece is like across about here somewhere. So making sure that all looks good. No sign of delamination down the back of the blades.
No, Daddy.
Sweetheart, where are you? Hold on. Can't see you. Where is it? Hey, where are you? Oh, you're just talking. No, sweetheart. I'll see you tomorrow morning.
You too.
Bye, darling.
It's adorable.
No sign of that. Yeah, so the tip cap is bonded in, so we don't want to see any signs of any corrosion, splitting of any description around this area. And they really, ideally, should be painted the whole time, so there's no way water, etc., can get in to try and degrade that bond. So I'm going to check both those blades. Of course, also, if I hold on to them and give them a bit of a twist, I can move all the mechanism, make sure it all moves nice and smoothly, but I can also, if I'm a bit more gentle, hear it more than feel it. Certainly on there. You can feel how much free play there is. Now, when it's all brand new, there's not a single bit of free play, but slowly the pitch links will wear. Because if I just rattle that blade, it's like, well, where is that play? And you might not be able to see it, but what you can do is you can start to feel it. You put your fingers in certain places, and suddenly, aha, there it is. It's there. It's in that joint. So often you can feel it more than see it. You can isolate that particular part and decide whether it's acceptable or not, safe or not. You sometimes see people, they'll twiddle pitch links, but when they're new, they're quite stiff. And when they're slightly worn, they're a lot freer to move. That doesn't really tell us a vast amount. And sometimes they'll get play across them. Now, these ones, especially this one here, look. Whoops, hold on to that. There's a bit of play in that pitch link. That's okay, as long as it doesn't have excessive longitudinal play. That's where it all counts. So if I now hold on to these 2 bolts and try and pull and push and part, there's literally nothing in there. It's still good as gold, no problems at all. And you do, right? That's things. So it's we've got to understand what is acceptable and what's not acceptable.
You'll also, while you're there, check and see little paint marks as well, that it's not starting to lose.
A lot of critical parts also have a secondary, what looks like a bit of a slightly cheap, nasty, thin nut. It's a jam nut.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's a bit like double locking. Just to help lock it in place. So if you put 2 two nuts on a thread. Tighten the first one up, but then you can't lock it in. Literally, they're really hard to. You can literally can't get them undone. So it's an extra precaution as well.
Do that with Meccano.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. Otherwise, you have the locking wire on various things again to help make sure there's no way they can come undone.
And telltale up there.
Yep. Now this one gets changed on a regular basis because it's exposed to sunlight, UV, and they discolour quite quickly. So that one does get changed on a fairly regular basis. Making sure there's no signs of any oil leaks from the output. But how do I check the input seal of this gearbox? There's a seal kind of around about there, but it's in here.
You don't.
Well, I don't like the sound of that. Well, the oil level looks all right.
Yeah. What that? Was that window up there?
That checks really the coupling.
Right.
So potentially it would maybe, but it's up inside here. It's the other side of this little bulkhead, as it were, this mounting gland.
You see oil just
maybe, yeah. If it's excessive, you'd get it around here, and this is all lovely dry. But of course, if it drips inside, it's just going to disappear down here inside the tail cone. However, if you move the dry shaft out, that's right in line with the seal.
So
it's nice to try. Yep. Because when you think about it, if I move that back in, so look, it's gone from there, it's gone that far. So it's gone right the way past the seal, so it would drip onto it. And you would be able to protect it on there. If we got it on here, it'd be really quite bad. Or it's leaking somewhere else on the gearbox. Yeah, it's an easy way to double check. So what's this thing here? It's got two wires on it. It looks really simple though.
Tail rotor chip.
So what did say online?
It was the chip sensor.
Yes, it is. That's right. Well, it sounds very complicated, Ross. How does that work?
Oh, it's just it detects when there's metal shards, like making creating a circuit effectively.
Yeah, there's a little probe in there. Somewhere along the lines, it's got a magnet on it to attract. It's only ferrous particles, of course, and attract. With a bit of insulation, and the idea is the outside is negative, so it's earthed out on the body, and up the middle you've got a live, which is attached to a light on the instrument panel, and it pops out the end next to the magnet. There's a little gap between that, or it's insulated, that and the earth. So if you get enough metal attracted, makes the circuit, like Ross just said, puts the light on. What we don't know if that light comes on, it could be one piece of metal, could be a big bit of metal, could be a million tiny little fragments that have managed to just get attracted. That oil does get changed every, I think is it 300? I can't remember if it's 300 or 500 hours. It does get changed. And it is pretty unusual to see one of those come on. But again, it could just be a sliver, or it could be, lots of tiny little particles. Either way around, it's not a brilliant. Good. So that's how those sort of chip techs, or sometimes mag plugs, they might be called, especially if they're removable, like on the camera. You can actually remove them and have a look and see what's on there. Not that we want you to do that. Okay, checking all the bolts are tight up, all those sorts of things. Now, something that does crop up is the Delta 3 hinge. I've got more chance of asking the guys over there.
Yeah.
Does anybody want to tell me what it is or where it is?
It's a hinge with 3 points on it. So called it 3 hinge otherwise.
Is that your hint?
Yes,
my hint.
Yeah.
Look at what the blade does.
It is purely on this helicopter the fact that the tail rotor, the pivot point, is at an angle, a 45-degree angle. It's a bit like a triangle, if you like. But what it does do, so this is more going into principles of flight. Pedals, because they'll change the pitch. Will want to flap and all sorts of things, but to try and minimise the flapping, if the blade tries to flap down, the way this is mounted, it applies a bit of pitch and it tries to come back again. So it helps to sort of minimise the amount of flapping, especially towards things like the tail boom, etc. So it's Delta 3 hinge. But how do you check one of these? Well, you look at it's like an elastomeric. It's got rubber sort of moulded into there with the bolt passing through. You want to check it's not all delaminated, that you can clearly feel it springs back. It doesn't just stay in one position. The old ones weren't elastomeric. They would stay in one position. expectant visitor. And not easy, but you kind of meant to hold onto the bolt and try and turn the tail rotor and see if there's any play in there. I mean, my God, it's got to be bad to get play in there. I mean, it's falling apart at that point. I think it'd be fairly obvious visually, but anyway, there we are. You want to check there's no play inside here. And indeed, you can feel it's kind of springy and no play at all. So what's this little nylon thing in here, this rubbery nylon-y bit in the middle then?
So what's that?
Oh no, it's like a...
Is that the tail rotor thrust nut?
Not the thrust nut, no. It's just simply a mast bumping, if you like. Because if this goes too far, it hits it, and it's actually, look, rubber. Yeah, it's a rubber bush.
Oh, so it protects
So
the
it's not
shaft.
that different to what we've got up the top there, if it teeters too much. Right, we spend far too much time down here. Right, come on in and move along. Checking the other side of the tail boom. Again, for those silly people that want to try and... Unfortunately. Whilst we're kind of coming round, this is probably quite a good site to see the squirrel cage. Yeah, it's often described as a squirrel cage.
Why is that? Is there a reason? Squirrel cage? Where does it come from?
Listen, I'm always happy for people to correct me or check it up. I don't mind, but I can only assume it comes from hamster wheel.
Hamster wheel.
Yeah, somewhere along the lines. Maybe I don't know if it's lost in translation or whatever, but it just looks like hamster wheel, doesn't it? The squirrel cage. Yeah, they're kind of there to keep squirrel cages or hamster wheels are there to keep them exercised, isn't it? Because the poor thing thinks it's going somewhere. Anyway, that's what it looks like. So how are we going to check this?
Make sure all the marks are all aligned.
Yep.
Make sure there's no debris in there.
How are we going to check it for cracks? Well, visually. So something else we can do. Okay. Yeah, good old tap. Steel drum band, isn't it? Steel band. There we are. All sounds good.
Method to the madness.
And then there seems to be a line through it. What's that all about?
So that's to make sure that the clutch hasn't slipped. So these lines are in line with the...
We're on the right track. Well, this fan is mounted, this squirrel cage, this cooling fan for the engine, is mounted onto the end of the crankshaft. It's not actually attached to the crankshaft. It's attached to a bit of a tapered shaft that is attached to the crankshaft. Now, what you don't want is maybe, because this is sucking a lot of air in, what if it managed to suck in something fairly big that kind of jolted that fan sufficiently? If that was attached directly to the crankshaft with no give, that could easily bend your crankshaft. You could now have an instant engine failure, for instance, just as an example. That's not good news. So what they've done is they've put it just on a smooth, tapered shaft, and it's held on there by that big nut, pretty damn tight, but it can slip. We couldn't possibly move it like that and make it slip. But if it had an impact, for instance, of something, then it will allow it to move and absorb that impact without damaging the crankshaft, and therefore hopefully not giving you an engine failure. But what it can do, although it doesn't seem to do it on 22s, is it can be a sign that somebody's also started with the throttle open, especially 44s. So we check it's all in alignment to make sure it hasn't shifted. If it's shifted, you don't go flying. That's it. It's got to be checked. We've got to try and find out why that's out of alignment. Let's say 22s, it won't do it. But 44s, you start with the throttle open, the fan, the engine kicks so quick that it leaves the fan behind and shifts in.
Oh, wow.
That's it. Anyway, that all looks nice. The ducting all looks nice, no cracks, etc. And so we're kind of in this area now, aren't we? We can see the other side of the drive belts. We can see things like the clutch actuator. That's the motor itself, the electric motor that winds. It's almost like a kind of worm and peg scenario, and winds the upper pulley away from the bottom one. And there's a springs in there that can detect the tension and all sorts of things. So I won't go fully into all that. Just all looks all right. All the cable, all the wiring is all nicely kept away. It's not going to rub on anything. And then you get to this pitch link here, as it were. That's what it looks like. Look, same sort of Teflon coated bearing ends to them, as it were. And this one's really important. want to make sure this is definitely not looking like it's coming undone, because what it's holding is that upper pulley in its lateral position. So it allows it to go up and down to tension the belt, but it doesn't allow it to move horizontally. That's not likely to fail, but you really want to just pay attention and make sure that's okay. Because if that doesn't hold that pulley in place, it's a big problem. Framework, we can see things like fuel tanks, and the main fuel tanks, no suddenly smell of attachment bolts around the tail cone. So I'm here, so I can tell you what, I can either go up here or I can go down there. I'm going to go down here next, and it will make sense why in a minute. More teletemps, more belts, alternator. Okay, just have a bit of feel, make sure the belt's not too loose. Not that you can do a lot about it because it's locked up. But at least you could say to somebody, please, can you sort this out because it's a bit too loose, the belt. And the alternator itself shouldn't be able to move either. That should be pretty rigidly attached. We can see more of the exhaust. Now, this exhaust, it's got like a flimsy cover around it here. What is that? Well, I'm glad you said that, Sid, because from this side I can certainly see there's a hose that seems to go to the exhaust, and if I look through, there's another hose the other side. These orange hoses go into the exhaust, and if I follow it, actually one hose goes up here. There's a bit of a scoop and a grill and an electric motor, and the other side of the hose I can see actually goes into the firewall of the helicopter, probably inside the helicopter.
That's your heating.
Yes, that's your heating, isn't it?
Yeah.
So the air, if we're flying forwards, could be scooped through here, or you can turn an electric fan on, and the later ones, it's actually the air comes from the cooling fan. Anyway, it pushes it through. Comes from here down into this area, but behind here is not just simply exhaust fumes; it's more metal of the exhaust. So the exhaust box shape actually goes in, then comes back out again. There's lots. It almost looks like turbo wheels in there. It's got these little blades sticking up of it, and to help hold this shape. And it's a heat exchanger. It's just to pass cold air over the exhaust box that's operating at very high temperature, absorb that heat back into the cockpit. And like Malcolm just said, yeah, we start these up within seconds. It's already pushing hot air through, or warm air, and within a minute, yeah, you've got hot air coming through, haven't you? They're brilliant, really work really well. Because it's such a large area, same with the 44. Heaters are really good in them, aren't they? Very good. So we want to make sure that it's no signs of any cracks and whatnot, but in particular the exhaust, of course, hasn't got a crack, because if that's got a crack, potentially you could get exhaust fumes. But when they talk about carbon monoxide exhaust fumes coming through, it's not really here, it's inside there, behind here, and you can't see that. That's why we've got our carbon monoxide detectors in there anyway, because we can't visually see if that exhaust is cracked internally. Rocker covers, more drain tubes, HT leads. Now there's another set of these. We can't see them. They're up inside here. We can only see the lower set. So remember, 2 spark plugs per cylinder. I can see things like the carburettor. And then if I really wanted to, I could then operate the throttle, and you can see the arm move. Look. There it is. Now, I've just twisted that throttle, what I think is fully open. Is the throttle fully open? No. No, if I now lift the collective, it will now go, there it is, look, it's gone past, there's fully open there. Yes. And it shows you now that mechanical link between the lever and the throttle. If I put that lever down and just close the throttle into idle, if I lift the lever up, will it move the throttle? No. Yes.
If you're not,
50-50, you still got it wrong. Right. Now, by magic, if I now lift the collective up, the throttle will barely move, if anything at all, will it? What have I done? It's different.
Ooh. You've held the throttle into the detent.
Yeah, I've got to hold it. Look, if I let go,
well done.
Just sprung back now.
Well done.
The throttle. But if I hold it to the detent, it won't open the throttle. So this is for if we need to do something like an engine off landing, and we don't want the throttle to the engine to suddenly kick back in. We have to hold it in that position. Okay, but I've tested all that. I can test things like, if you really want to see it, I can move the fuel mixture. There we go. Oh, you'll see it back down there, Tony. So it's a different arm around the front of the carburettor.
Oh, yeah.
But to be honest, you'll soon know if that's working or not, because it won't run. Or you won't be able to shut it off with the fuel mixture. So there's a few things we could check by that if we wanted to. Bit of the throttle movement, you mix, you can see it's going from lean to rich or rich to lean. Another magneto, and this is the which magneto?
Right.
How'd you know that?
The other one on my left.
Yay! And it also usually says it says something on it. I think the other one had LM on it, unless it just happened to be purely coincidental. Do you know, I think it might have been coincidental. I thought I was onto something there. I think it's just purely coincidental. The other one was stamped. The other one's got LM on it. That left magneto. It was so good. I was thinking I was going to come in here. It's going to have RM on it. Battery, of course, it's inside the box. This is not the battery. But I'm just checking it's not loose. Earth straps. Of course, engine oil. Want to check the oil level. Yo, there it is. On an R22, the minimum oil for takeoff, or for starting up, if you like. Some. Yeah. 4 quarts, and the maximum 6 quarts. Yeah. Many schools of thoughts on how much oil you should have in your engine.
More than 4.
Definitely 4 or above, absolutely. But you'll often hear us, we tend not to like them to drop below that halfway between them, because especially in the warmer weather, the oil is there to help cool the engine. It's not just purely for lubrication, but also when you think about what the oil has got to do, that's not a lot of oil for a 6-litre engine to absorb all those carbon deposits, and that's what the engine oil does. It absorbs that carbon deposits and surrounds them with a film of oil to help protect it. But if you've got less oil, it has less ability to cool and to protect your engine. Some engines, if you put 6 quarts, it does spit it out the breather a bit, sort of thing.
Yeah, and that's the other side.
But it will do that even when it gets down to 4 quarts. So I'm not going to go into that whole argument. Anyway, for us, we like it to be at least halfway between the marks or above. So if this one, if I check in, it's below 5, we'll put a bottle of oil in. I won't just top it up to half, I'll just put a bottle of oil in. Not worth mucking around. And to be fair, his actually is pretty good, isn't it? Doesn't burn a lot of oil at all. It's very good. So we like it like that. Anything else in particular I wanted to show you on here? Oh, yes. So let's just, I've undone the dipstick and I've decided to pull it right out, although you don't actually need to do that to check the oil, especially if you've got a torch. I'll do this, so you might have to come over my shoulder if you want to see all this, but if I use my torch and hold it in a certain way, yeah, quicker, Tony. If I now lift that dipstick up, I can actually see exactly where the oil level is. I can see the 4, it's just at the top of the grey tube, and I can see the 6, and it is about a quarter of the way down, if that. So it's a good 5.5 quarts of oil in there at the moment. Job done. I haven't had to pull it out, get it all over me, all over the aircraft. But let's just say I took it out and, oh dear, it's down on 4. I'd be slightly concerned because it shouldn't be that low, especially as in the tech log, it probably says more than that. But okay, I've decided I need to put some oil in. What do I do with the dipstick? Yeah, kind of. I have to be a little bit careful here because I don't want you to go and put a dipstick that's got cut oil all over the seat. Right, of course not. But what you don't want you to do is, I'll put it down there, put it on the floor. A, you're going to pick up dirt on it, but B, there is a chance you'll forget to put it back in the aircraft. So what do we do with it? You kind of might be able to rest it on here, but again, there's a risk you could leave it on the aircraft and forget to put it back in. So to cover ourselves, what I said is, you know, there's usually plenty of cloth under the seat, like oily rags. Use one of those, but do put it on the seat so you can't possibly go flying without it. But either way around, we now double check prior to going flying that it is actually back in place. It's one of our quick run around, last little check. Fuel caps are definitely on because it's a regular occurrence, people leave fuel caps off, and the dipstick's definitely in and tight. We'll just give a quick look and give it a quick prod so you know it's in there. Carefully, it's just got the right angle in there.
more on the 44, which I know is awkward, but thinking about it, I haven't seen it on the 24.
It is awkward.
So one of these bottles, thankfully, has been very well designed, especially with the light foaming engine. And when you get it in there, the dipsticks like that, you can get the oil bottle in place and whoop, like that. It doesn't go in it, but it rests perfectly on it. You hold it. I mean, one foul movement, done. And it works really well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If you try and do it a little bit,
No,
does not work. Blub, blub, blub everywhere. It goes and makes a right old mess.
Don't squeeze it, what they do.
Yeah, no.
No squeeze it.
But do warm it up before
Yeah.
it goes in much quicker and easier then. Okay. So I'm just going to double check that I did put that back in. Yep, but I've not done it really tight. Just nipped it up. If you didn't tie it, you'll almost never get it undone afterwards, or you'll spin the tube around. Yeah,
Someone put it very tight.
it's weird. How could that possibly happen? You know, it's just a thread with a little O-ring on there. If you do that tight and then run that engine, it will tighten itself up even more, and you'll struggle to get it undone. Quite literally.
Even on a car engine, if you want to top up the oil, I know sometimes the heat has
it really does.
Very tight, no change.
They're in plastic tubes, so the tube then spins around slightly and it leaks and all sorts. So yeah, don't ram it in there, just nip it up. All right, okay. So I've had a good look around here.
Had to get both of my hands in there.
Looking around the skid tubes again and the shoes, the attachment bolts, all those sorts of things. We haven't done the sampling of the fuel yet. I'd look inside this part of the helicopter. So I'm going to whiz through because I'm running out of time. Bit of the same sort of thing, seat belts, etc. Looking under the seats, make sure there's nothing nasty. Us instructors know to grab the collective and give it a bit of a twist to make sure it's definitely in, because you can't see it otherwise where the fixings are. This one's going to come out in our hand. All those other good things that you were sort of looking at, headsets and whatever else. Doors, and making sure the hinges and the split pins are all in place. So we're getting close to the end now, aren't we, in the screen? So we've kind of gone right the way around the helicopter, but now I want to go up. And here it is. I put kept in there. This is a very good pipe to hold on to. And I can use that just to support myself, just so I don't fall backwards, for instance. And once I've got my foot on there, I can even possibly get my second foot on there. And hey, I'm good. You can see an awful lot up here then. Looking at the rotor head. One of the things I want to do is just wipe our finger around the back of these bushes that are inside here. They're Teflon coated, so we can see if lots is coming off on our fingers. Just inside the coning hinges. That all looks pretty good. Up there, they're the pads for if the mast, the hub tries to make contact with the mast to help try and absorb it a little bit to help reduce the touching of it. So there's a lot of nylon pads. And if they've got big dents in them, yeah, clearly someone's been a bit overzealous with the cycling, especially on sloping ground. Checking pitch links, make sure everything on the back end. I'm also going to make sure my fingers are clear as I turn this round my hand, because if my fingers are anywhere in there, that's a bit of shearing action. So keep well clear of it.
Yep.
Scissor links. So if I move that left and right, I can see how much play is in the scissor link. That's pretty normal to see that. Again, the pitch links. Doing this doesn't tell me an awful lot other than whether they're brand new or not, because if they're stiff, they could be brand new. Or if I put some tension on there, suddenly that stiffens up or frees off accordingly. And it might even have lateral play left and right across the ball. But what I'm interested in is that longitudinal. So I've really got to get hold of it, push and pull. But the problem is I'm now moving everything. So if I get hold of the bottom end, now suddenly push and pull in opposite directions. Yeah, I can't move, and I'll do the same for both sides to see how much play they've got in them. This is where all our spindle bearings are and thrust bearings. It's oil filled, so I'm checking there's no signs of oil leaking out of them. It certainly feels like there's something in there, that's for sure, but I don't want to prod it too hard. And this boot, be careful, it's just a dust cover. Don't yank on it because it comes off and it's really difficult to get back on again. But under there is the uni ball for the swash plate. It's like a big carbon ball inside there. Got the non-rotating part of the swash plate and, of course, the rotating part. Having a good look around the roots, make sure there's no signs of any cracks or anything along those lines. I can then push up on the blade. I can check that coning if I really wanted to. Here, I've managed to push that other blade down. So my super assistant will demonstrate how we're going to check that blade.
Get all your weight and just pull down.
Your low battery system.
I'm only just.
Oh, is it right? Okay. There might be just about enough time left on it. Yeah, so looking on the upper surface, the lower surface, get a good old look at it from down there. And James, what James can also do is he holds onto the leading and trailing edge and literally kind of changes the pitch on it, as it were. What you can now feel is all of the play in kind of all of the pitch links, almost all the way down to the cyclic.
You can even see the cyclic
twitching slightly.
And there's bound to be a bit of play in there, crikey. I mean, think of all the various links. But yeah, it's not making sure it's not excessive amounts. And you do that for each blade. And of course, you want to make sure they're equal, aren't they? There's not one with excessive amounts of play. You realise just how much they can seesaw, can't they? They can teeter. And then you can see just how potentially close looking to already get the tail. So that's without any actual sailing.
Actually, you can see how that could.
Yeah, it's dead in line.
Yeah. Actually, I can see.
Wouldn't take much. Come down the dong.
Exactly there to there.
Yep.
God, that is.
So therefore, if I have done this to check the blades both sides, I'm just going to seesaw them back level again. But we push up, we don't pull down. Okay. So I've been started off to the front, kind of gone up and down as we're around the body. I've looked up the side, all the way round the tail, back round the other side. Engines, lower and upper, fuel tanks, etc. Cabin, skids, gone up the top and then back down. And that's kind of roughly how I normally would check a heli. I'd quite often start off on the door that I'm flying with and end up on the door I'm flying with. So I've kind of gone all the way round, up and down. And that works really well. Fine. And the checklist more or less does that. The Capri checklist talks about stations. The Robinson one works more in this area, but it's all the same stuff at the end of the day. But because you've got to know what each thing is to be able to check it and what it does. Otherwise, how do you know how to check it? What's good, what's bad? The belts are loose. Well, is that good or bad? You need to know, don't you?
Yeah.
And then the last bit, I said we're going to run out of time, but however you do fuel sampling on your aircraft, you want to sample the fuel. So when do you sample the fuel?
And after.
First thing in the morning.
Yeah, you should definitely sample it first thing in the morning. Of course you should. Yeah, before you go fly in for the first flight of the day.
Or 15 minutes after a refuel.
Good.
Or at least 15 minutes after a refuel.
It's no good testing the fuel tanks now and then say, right, I'll have some fuel, please, and then not testing them. You want to test it after it's been refueled, don't you? And what about the thing down the bottom here called the gascalator? This mysterious unit with the name like gascalator, which is actually really just a filter and a water trap. That's all it is. A little paper filter element, but there's a bit of a bulb trap water in there. Would that tell me if I've just put a load of water in the fuel tank?
No.
No.
Because
it can't see it.
Hasn't been passed through it yet.
Yeah.
It's just
it kind of tells you that previous flight. But you would obviously still check that in the morning because you want to have a look if there's anything from the previous flight, for instance. So yeah, so the gas plate only tells you about the previous flight, doesn't tell you about the one you're about to do, as it were. That makes sense, or the fuel you just added. Whereas the fuel drains definitely do. Now the fuel drains, might as well quickly mention this, they're sprung loaded. They're a very simple kind of O-ring affair of like a tap, a valve. Really, very simple, which means they can easily get dirt caught under them. So you're trying to test the fuel, which is a good thing, trying to make sure there's no water or debris. If there's little bits in there, they quite often get caught under the seal. Now it doesn't seal and it leaks. You can kind of wiggle them. With a bit of luck, you'll get that bit of muck through. Otherwise, you'll need to very carefully use, and I don't want you to do it, but you use a very gentle bit of compressed air to just blow it back the other way to release it, and then you can kind of drain it back down again. But yeah, they do have a little bit of a habit of leaking. So you're doing the very thing you're trying to do, the right thing for testing them. And there you have it, really. Nicely done. Any questions?
Yes, when you was checking the belts, you know, with your fingers and that, it was all to do with the purpose of them not slipping off the pulley. But is that why you've got it in your little book by the front seat? Is that you want without delay to engage the clutch?
That's really more just about the fact that the engine pulley is now spinning inside those belts. and it's kind of wearing that area. I mean, it's hardly excessive amounts of wear, but you don't want to sit there for ages.
Yeah.
You want to kind of get that moving to minimise the amount of wear. And it's another reason, of course, why you want to, especially overnight, you don't want the belts being left tensioned overnight, because they kind of slightly retain that shape when they've been slackened off, which can encourage them a little bit to hop off the pulley. But only if the belts are slack. You know, they've got to be pretty slack to do it. But that whole engage the clutch, rotor's beginning to turn within 5 seconds is the sign we're looking for to make sure the belts have got the right sort of detensioning. But we can kind of detect it by pushing those belts on our fingers. But the only other bit I want to quickly add on there was we did check the windscreen. I did mention that there are a few squashed bugs on there, so should we just leave it, or?
No.
Yeah, because they are. It's quite nice to have a clean windscreen. Anyway. Yes, they can. Yes, so it's quite an important part of that pre-flight potentially is to clean your windscreen, because bugs, especially maybe up here, slightly above the horizon, have a terrible habit of looking like other aircraft, don't they?
They keep on giving you mini heart attack.
Yes.
Yeah.
Then what happens is you slowly get used to them. And
So
then
you
when there is an
stop seeing
aircraft,
them.
you don't pay any attention because it's just another squashed bug. Yeah, I've been there with that. Every time there's a retro, it catches you a corny right, it's a bug. Damn it. And slowly you kind of get used to it and you ignore it. And the next thing you know, oh, well done, no, there is actually an aircraft. Yeah, I tend to find it's when they're over there, it affects me more than my side. I catch them in the corner of my eye through the cockpit. There we go.
Brilliant.
I think my phone only said my battery's going almost flat. Yeah, so we haven't used the checklist today because we have used one before, but you can see how we've just done it in a methodical manner. And as I said to you, big or small helicopter, I kind of do it always in that same way because it sticks to a routine. I know I've gone round everything, but I do need to know what it is I'm actually looking at, what it should look like, and what should be there and what not there. That just takes a bit of time and experience, doesn't it? The more you do, the better you get at it. And therefore, the more proficient you'll be, and it will take less time but to do the same thorough check. Yeah, good. Thanks, Tony.
Thank you very much, Tony.
That's all right. Look, they're all still here, so they have been helping, and the sun's been, that's beautiful now.
Look at that.
Yeah. Tony said, yeah, he could do any videography for weddings.
Quick photo of the month.
Say again?
That looks like a good opportunity for photo of the month with that sun.
It actually is quite good. Yeah, I think I will take
Ross.
it. Hey, Ross is on it. I'm going to do it right now. Are you ready? Oh man, I'm holding the button, and I can't resist. Brilliant. Well, oops. Oh, everybody's still there. Thank you so much for joining us all online.
Navigation next time.
And I think from memory, I just had a little voice in my head that says navigation. It's amazing, isn't it?
Your way there.
Will you find your way there?
Very good. Boom, boom. We'll have a lovely evening, everybody.
Yes, thank you.
And if you don't see you before, we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. And thank you for the cameraman, for Tony.
Hey!
Bye.
Cheers. Thanks, everybody.
Right, cheers.